I'm Gina Bell. I'm a storyteller. This is Jars of Arioch, Chapter 4, The Fourth Monkey and Dead Dogs. Hello? I woke still with a sleepy voice. It was Benoit. I need to see you. Can I come and grab you super quick? Maybe 2 hours tops, and you can bring the dog. Benoit sounded a little excited. I showered and fed Hope while we waited. She got to my hotel about 30 minutes later. Benoit had a plastic bag in her hand, and she was standing back away from my door to not disturb the jar that had been placed in front of it. We both looked down at the jar. It looked like a mason jar that had been painted a deep red. It was also glowing with what looked to be twinkling lights, like something you might pick up at Cost Plus. Benoit took out a pair of gloves and very gently picked up the jar by its lid. She brought it into the room and pulled a bag from her pocket. She pulled out a small white towel and sat the jar on top. Little flecks of red landed on the white towel as she sat it down. She opened her phone and took a recording of us opening the jar. I think it's painted with blood, but I can test it. She pulled out a Q-tip and gently rubbed it against the jar. She put the Q-tip in with some clear liquid and put a little strip onto it. The strip turned green. It's definitely blood, she said. She carefully opened the jar and looked inside. Hope was right there with us, staring into the jar also. Benoit spilt the contents of the jar out onto the table. It had been filled with dead, light green bugs. Dead katydids. Dead katydids? What are they? You know that loud chirping you hear at night? Yeah, I've been wondering what made that sound. Well, that's interesting. And did you ask anyone about it? No, not even Google. Well, katydids, they fill their bodies with air, and when they let the air out, it makes like a loud chirping sound. There are billions of them here in the Smokies. Back home, we called them screech bugs. They put them in a mason jar and shake the jar to make them screech. I can't figure out what's making it glow, though. As she said that, the jar's glow began to fade. It took about 10 seconds before the twinkling stopped completely. Benoit pulled a plastic bag out of her pocket. It had a handwritten note on it, identical to the one I had found on my car after the first night here in Gatlinburg. Benoit's note had the same runny ink and said the same thing that had been written on mine. I found this on my car the first night I got here. It's written in blood just like yours. I guess he knows I'm here. I ran the prints from this note, and they are in the same language pattern as the others. After you left the station last night, the officer that had come in to ask you about the video was talking about it with another cop. I overheard him talking about your video, and he said the little girl he had avoided on the road was in it. Now, I've watched that video several times, and I've never seen a little girl. Can I see the video you showed him? We both watched it. There was no little girl. The cop that you saw in the accident that night, he just so happens to be related to the chief of police here. He's his son. I find that interesting, but I can't understand why this boy is so emphatic about this little girl. I think I met his father. Is that Reagan? Yes, Chief Reagan is his father. Chief Reagan interviewed me the morning of the accident. He asked me what I saw on the road, but I told him I didn't see anything before the accident. I had no idea it would matter so much. Benoit's phone rang. Special Agent Benoit? Okay. Yeah. I'll be up there in a few minutes. Well, now the chief of police is missing. I have to go. Stay nearby, Tracy. After Benoit left, Hope began to growl, and she wouldn't quit. She stared at the creepy corner and continued a low, menacing growl. An odd smell filled the room, and all the hair on my body stood up. Hope began pawing at the door. I felt scared, so we got out of there and took a walk downtown. The streets were packed with tourists. It was extremely hot and humid as we walked through the hordes of people. Occasionally a sweaty arm slid by my sweaty arm. Yuck. The parkway in Gatlinburg was on a hill that sloped downward. As we walked, I could see a hat sticking up out of the crowd. I followed behind him. All I could make out was the bobbing of his hat. No matter what I did to try and make up ground, he matched me. I wanted to call Benoit and tell her he was down here, but I wasn't certain it was him. He was walking quickly, and the crowds just seemed to part for him. I spent almost an hour trying to catch up, but I couldn't. I was now sweating, and Hope was panting like crazy. We sat down for a moment to catch our breath. I watched the hat bob while he walked, and then he moved slowly out of my line of sight. I wanted to get a good look at him, and it was daytime. How could he be so brazen? Hope and I were seated on a bench in a little square. There was a fudgery and a chicken place. There was also a coffee shop, so we walked in. No one said anything about her. I got a bottled water and a coffee. The lady there even gave me an extra cup for Hope. I walked her back outside and put some water in the extra cup and let Hope drink her fill. While she was drinking, she began her low growl again. Hope very slowly turned her body and began walking back to the parkway. It was crowded, and the traffic had really built up. As we approached, I saw the bob of a brimmed hat. He wasn't walking fast, and yet each time I tried to get a look at him, someone got in the way. We went back into the air conditioning of the coffee shop. I sat there most of the afternoon just playing with my phone. I signed into Travis's Facebook and began looking through his friends list. He had so few, and they were all family. Family that never had anything to do with us. I looked at my mother's page, and she hadn't posted anything for over a year. My mother didn't even know he was dead yet. As the sky began to darken, I looked down at the time. It was now 3:33 in the afternoon. I looked outside and saw big black clouds moving into Gatlinburg. Then the bucket rain began again. Hope and I watched all the people running to their cars or into restaurants. It was a cavalcade of people trying to find shelter. The traffic became even worse as everyone tried to leave at once. It rained and stormed for over an hour as we watched. Each time I opened the door, Hope would growl and want to go back inside. "It's just rain, baby." Just as I said that, I saw a flash of lightning that looked like it had hit right next to us. Thunder shook the building, and the people around me chuckled nervously. I waited another hour, and the rain got worse. The traffic finally died down, and very few were left on the streets. "Damn rain," the owner of the coffee shop muttered. She was a young, pretty woman. We were the only ones left in her shop. "I keep hoping it'll clear up so we can walk home," I said to the barista. "Baby, this could go on all night. It's been so hard here since the corporate giant over there opened, and the rain doesn't help." She pointed to the Starbucks across the street. I looked over at it, and there was my man wearing a hat. He was walking down the parkway again. I could see his coat now and his hat. It was him. I grabbed my phone to call Benoit. "Special Agent Benoit," she answered on the first ring. This is Tracy. The guy with the hat, he's downtown. I'm looking at him right now." "Well, keep an eye on him, but Tracy, do not approach him. I am on my way." I ran out the door with Hope and ran to the parkway. The man in the hat walked quickly down the opposite side of the street. He stopped when he got to the fudge place on the corner. This time it felt like he was waiting for me. I could feel my clothes getting heavy from the rain. My jeans were soaked. Little beads of water poured off my hair. I found an awning, and me and Hope stood under it. I took out my phone, but the battery was low. I opened my camera and hit video. The tall man in the hat now began walking his way back up the parkway. His clothing looked like it was made from animal hide, brown with off-white creases here and there. His jacket and the hat were both made from the same hide as were his boots. As he walked, people moved out of his way. None of them reacted to him. They just moved. Water poured off the brim of his hat. As I watched him, people passed by him and occasionally blocked my view. I could also see his reflection in the store's windows. He passed the first one, and as he moved past a new window, his reflection changed to that of a little girl. "What the fuck?" I whispered to myself. Then he stopped quickly before the next window, and he paused. I looked down at my phone to make sure I was getting everything, but the phone was black. It had died. I was really regretting the hour I spent watching TikToks. He paused, and Hope seemed angry. She was watching his every move also. With each step he took, she tried to move the back part of her body into me, like she needed to feel me there. The little girl in the mirror had long, white, very straight hair, like it had been flat-ironed. Locks of it hung on each side of her face and a strip of it down her back. She was wearing all black except for her thigh-high stockings that were white. You could see the skin of her thighs that met her black skirt. Her hat was pulled down to cover her face. She looked like a tiny woman in a costume more than she looked like a child. He moved to the next window, and now his reflection was that of a little boy with a hat and cowboy boots. Same jacket and gloves. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't logical. Hope had her back end against me. She put her head down low and watched every move he made. I realized Benoit would not be able to reach me now, and I felt a sudden wave of panic. The cavalry was coming, but it wouldn't know where to find me. We watched him walk, and as he walked, the reflections changed with each new window he passed. There was an old woman with a cane and a hat. The old woman was hunched over, with white hair like the little girl. The next window made him look like a female version of himself. I could see breasts, and the coat was snugger. He stopped and slowly turned his head my way. He had his head down, but looked at me slightly. He almost looked like he was dancing. He would back up occasionally so I could see the two different versions of him in two reflections at once. The change was seamless. I watched his female reflection mimic his every movement. He wanted me to see this. It was like he was showing off for me. A car stopped abruptly in front of us. It was Benoit, and she opened the door for me with her right hand. I opened the back and let Hope get in first. "He's right there!" Benoit's head jerked back to the other side of the street, but he was gone. "Where?" "Right there!" I pointed. We drove up and down the street several times before she took me back to the motel. I plugged in my phone as quickly as I could and grabbed a towel for my still dripping hair. I lit a cigarette and sat there shaking a bit. I smoked quickly and then went into the bathroom to change out of my wet clothes. "Tell me what you saw, Tracy." "I can't until my phone boots up." "Why?" Just give it a minute. It makes no sense." "Well, I want to hear what you saw first." "If I tell you, you won't believe me. I'm hoping to just show you." "Tracy, I want to hear what you saw." "Okay, but if you think I'm crazy, well, you might be right." I told Benoit about how we had tried to catch up to him but couldn't. I told her about the rain. I turned on the phone and it came on. I pulled up the video and she watched it as I told her everything that had happened. He changed shape in the reflection of the windows. Like, he stayed looking like he had all along, but his reflection changed. Though the video was only 4 seconds long, I was able to capture the reflection of the little girl. He changed into other things too. A little boy and a woman, an old woman. Am I crazy? Because I feel crazy. Benoit sent herself a copy of the video. I don't think you're crazy. I'm going to have some guys in my technical department look this over. It doesn't make sense, and yet here it is. I'll have to get back to you on the crazy part. Did you do anything to this video? As if we detect anything that might suggest you edited it for anything, then you might be in a mess of trouble. My man will know if it's been edited. I didn't do anything to that video. I wouldn't know how even if I wanted to. Well, you can understand why I might think that, right? Of course. That's why I asked you if I was crazy. I know it sounds crazy. I know it doesn't make any sense. You said you also work with ritualistic crimes, right? Yes. I also know that there are things in this world that we cannot understand. Not yet, anyway. Is this a known ritual to anyone, the wise monkey thing? I know a lot about rituals, and this is nothing I've ever seen before. What he did to your brother and the others is like nothing I ever heard or read about, and I come from a rather colorful background. Colorful how? I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I'm from Louisiana. My family practices Louisiana voodoo. I was raised around all that, like lots of gree-gree. What the hell is gree-gree? I am a direct descendant of Marie Laveau. She was a voodoo queen in Louisiana. I should say she was the voodoo queen. In the traditional voodoo religion, you don't take money for things that will help people. It's supposed to be given to them. Voodoo has become a marketable product in New Orleans. They make money off the lore now. Tourists think it's fun. In the world I grew up in, it's very serious, and you can't charge for it. A gree-gree is like a little bag you carry around to ward off evil. I promised my mother I would always carry one with me. She pulled a pouch out of her pocket and tossed it to me. It smelled a little like the ball the Gros had given me. The chief of police for Gatlinburg is still missing, and everyone and their brother is out looking for him. He was nice to me. He seemed like a good man. Yeah, everyone at the station says that. I had a conversation with him when I got here. He was very professional with me. We also have a handful of folks that have come looking for some of their missing people. They're working with the rangers to search the woods. That's a big job in these woods. We have a helicopter out, but the trees are making it really challenging this time of year. Hope got up and went to the door. Her tail was wagging and she was whining excitedly. I opened the door and Jake was trying to carry Kai up the stairs. Kai had a purple cast and Blue was barking at Jake. "It's okay, Blue! He isn't hurting me on purpose!" Benoit walked out to try and help. Jake tossed me the key and I opened his room. The same smell of death hit me in the face as I opened the door. My grandfather was right. You never forget it. In the center of the room was a man on his knees. "Shut that door!" Benoit yelled while still holding half of Kai. They put Kai on my bed and Benoit called Gatlinburg PD. "I have a 1055 on Ski Mountain Road." I heard sirens off in the distance almost immediately. It sounded like they were coming in swarms from all directions. Reagan, the cop I watched drive off the road on Ski Mountain, was the first to arrive. He ran out of his car so quickly he didn't close the door. He ran up the stairs and Benoit grabbed him. "You can't go in there, officer." More cops arrived and saw Benoit struggling with Reagan. They ran to him and helped her hold him back. "Bill, look at me." Benoit tried to get his attention. Her hands gripped his shoulders with all her strength. His eyes were focused on the door. "Bill!" Reagan finally looked at her. Is that my dad in there?" Reagan asked with tears in his eyes. His voice was a shaking whisper. "I don't know who's in there. It looks like a man, but I was waiting for backup before going in. I need you guys to take Officer Reagan and Jake back to the station right now." A female cop I had never seen before acknowledged Benoit and offered to take them back. "Tracy, you and Kai need to stay in this room. Do you understand?" "I couldn't get in there if I wanted to right now," Kai yelled from my bed. I just nodded. We left the door open so we could watch what was happening. I moved the one chair that was in my room so that I could see better. Blue and Hope both sat with us, growling slow and low. Benoit waited for the crime scene van to arrive before allowing anyone into the room. I watched as they put on booties and protective gear to be careful of the crime scene. Benoit opened the door. She was the first to go in. As the officers began piling into the tiny room, Benoit yelled, "Stop! Only those who absolutely must come in are allowed in here right now. This room is too small for all y'all. Let me and the crime team secure the room first, please." Benoit pulled out her gun and opened the door as far as she could. All the motel residents were now leaning out of their rooms to try and see what was happening. I heard Benoit coughing. I could smell the room, and it smelled horrible. From where I sat, I could see blood all over the walls with similar symbols to what I had seen at Acorn Branch. It was everywhere. "Clear!" Benoit yelled from inside. I saw her holster her gun. She then allowed the crime scene people to go in. I could hear them inside taking pictures. After about 30 minutes, Benoit allowed 2 of the local cops to go inside. One walked back out and immediately threw up over the balcony. I heard the people below him scrambling to get out of the way. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" I overheard one of the cops ask Benoit. "No. I've seen some crazy stuff in my life, but never anything like this. Now y'all have Jake down at the station, and this is his room. I need your people to wait until I can question him. I don't think he did this." "Well, if he did, he won't have to worry about finding an attorney." Kai heard him and responded, "Jake has been with me all day. He was on video chat with me in that room last night. Jake didn't do anything. He took pictures of the room and of Blue for me last night in that room. Don't you even think about trying to pin any of this shit onto him." "Text me those videos and pictures, please, Kai. Tracy, give her my phone number." I leaned my head out as far as I could and saw Chief Reagan. His face was purple. He was on his knees with his hands in his lap. He looked like he had been dead a few days. There was something keeping his head up, but I couldn't make it out. His eyes had been removed, and there were big holes in his face where they had been. His mouth was sewn shut, and there was blood coming from his ears. The woman who rented the room below began screaming and running from her room. She was screaming and said the walls were bleeding. There was so much blood in the room that it had begun seeping to the room below. The cops walked out, and their blue booties were soaked with blood. Benoit had little commentary on the topic. She came out and gave her booties to the crime scene people. She walked into my room and went into the bathroom and closed the door. Poor Kai. They had taken Jake away so quickly that he didn't have time to get her crutches for her. He had locked the car on his way up and taken the keys to my brother's car with him. I told Kai that there were still some keys in a secret place under the car. I ran out to get them for her. I fished around in the tire well, trying to find the magnet box I had put just in case. My grandparents had taught me to always hide a key on any car that I owned. I found the key, and as I stood up, all the hair on my body did also. It was getting dark outside, and I could feel I was no longer alone. I held my breath and slowly looked around. I could hear Hope and Blue barking in my room. I slowly looked into the reflection of the glass on my brother's Honda, and I could see the brown leather brim of his hat right behind my head. I saw his hands on either side of my throat, as if he was about to strangle me. He had on leather gloves that matched his hat and coat. I screamed as loud as I could, and Benoit came flying out of my room with her gun in her hand. The cops that were still processing the scene in Jake's room came down with guns drawn also. Both the dogs ran out of the room and right towards me. All their hair was up, and they looked like they were about to kill something. I jerked my head around, and he was gone. Both dogs took off as fast as they could up Ski Mountain Road. In what seemed no more than a few seconds, they ran so fast I couldn't see either of them anymore. They had run into the woods. I could hear them barking and growling off in the distance. "Hope! Blue! Stop! Come!" Both dogs came running back. I could hear one of them getting closer and closer. The other cops took off in cars up Ski Mountain Road to try and find whatever the dogs were chasing. Benoit came down the steps with her gun pointed down in front of her. "Was it him?" she asked. "Yes. You didn't see him? He was right behind me. I saw his reflection in the window." "I'm sorry. I didn't see anything. The dogs seemed like they saw something, though. Looked like they were chasing it, whatever it was. No more going anywhere alone, please." She reached out to hug me, and I was shaking. "You're okay, Tracy. You're okay." I didn't feel okay. Hope and Blue both circled around us, growling and snarling. Hope had something in her mouth. She made an odd sound while she was trying to growl with it inside of her jaws. I went to grab it, and Benoit yelled at me to stop. She took a plastic bag out of her pocket and a glove. She put a latex glove on one hand and walked slowly to Hope. It was a leather glove. It was his leather glove. Hope politely lowered her head so Benoit could grab the glove from her. "That's his glove. I just saw it in the reflection." Benoit dropped it carefully into the bag and sealed it. She put it into her car. "From now on, I will not go anywhere without my dog. Mama warned me not to." I grabbed Kai's crutches out of the back of my car. We walked back upstairs, and Kai was so happy to see Blue. "Did y'all get him, Blue? Good girl. Good girl, Hope." Both dogs licked her face and wagged their tails. I looked down, and my carpet had a bloody footprint trail that led into the bathroom. It had come from Benoit. There had been so much blood in the carpet next door, it had seeped through the booties and onto her shoes. I remember that squish from Acorn Branch and the feel of blood on my feet squishing between my toes. It's sticky like syrup. Benoit went back to the murder scene and left me and Kai alone with the dogs. "Raven told me you picked out Blue the moment she was born." "Yep. I was right there watching when this girl come into the world." Raven told me that there are only maybe 1 in 100 puppies that are like them. "Yeah, she likes to say that, but I don't think it's 1 in 100. They're much rarer than that." "How do you know?" "Well, Crow told me they have a different smell to them, even right after birth. I sat there sniffing the whole time Blue's mama was giving birth, and after the first 3 there was this odd smell. I took it as a sign and told Mama she was the one. Maybe I just got lucky. I don't know. Mama was there when Blue gave birth to Hope. She snatched her up right quick after she was born. She swears that Hope hasn't had any training at all, that she's more like 1 in a million. She just gave her to you? I guess Mama sees you as her destiny. Now, I had a conversation with her about Hope right after you came. I was over at Crow's house, and Mama showed up with Hope. Nothing weird about that. Hope went all over the place with Mama. Well, the two sisters were talking in the back creepy room of hers. When Mama comes out, she had tears in her eyes. I asked her what the hell was wrong, and she said that Hope's destiny was on its way. Then you showed up. Blue and Hope both perked up and began howling. Kai and I could hear distant barking coming from the woods. You hear all that, Tracy? Yeah. What is that? The cops brought in a bunch of canine teams. They're hunting for him. Benoit must have used that scent from the glove Hope found. They're trying to track him. Blue and Hope were howling so loud now, Kai and I had to yell so we could hear each other over them. I started to yell to be quiet at Hope, and Kai stopped me. No, let 'em talk. They're communicating with those dogs out there. We both sat quietly while the dogs howled long and loud. Then we started hearing yelping in the woods. The dogs in the woods were all making horrible sounds like they were being attacked by something. I knew the mountains were filled with predators, but this didn't sound like a standoff with a bear. It went on for what felt like hours. We could hear the men yelling for their dogs. Then finally, we could only hear one dog, and then silence. After that stopped, both our dogs became quiet, and they laid down and curled up together. They seemed depressed. For the rest of the night, I could hear men yelling for their dogs. Kai and I stayed together in my small room and listened to their voices go from strong to hoarse. When they finally gave up, I watched the squad cars coming down the road. 10 trained police dogs went into the woods together, and none of them came out. We had both finally fallen asleep together when I woke to the sound of a loud thump, like someone had dropped something heavy. Both dogs lifted their heads to look at me. Kai was still sleeping. I looked at my phone, and it was 5 a.m. Another even louder thump, followed by glass shattering and then constant thumps until finally everything went quiet again. I grabbed both leashes and went to take them outside. The moment I opened the door, both dogs began whining. They were scared. I looked over the balcony and saw the bodies of dead canines all over the parking lot. Most were shredded to pieces. I dialed Benoit, and the next thing I knew, police cars began filling up the parking lot once again. I watched grown men cry in our parking lot as each one found pieces of their dog. I could feel the rage coming from each of them. These men were angry beyond words. First their chief of police, and now their dogs. So far, we were all losing against him. It didn't matter how big or how tough anyone was. It was like he was toying with us all. The crime scene van pulled into the parking lot, and right behind them was the news team. I ran back inside with both dogs, and Kai looked up at me, half asleep. "What the hell's going on now?" "Kai, do yourself a favor and try to go back to sleep. You don't want to see this. I wish I could unsee it myself already." Kai struggled with her crutches and walked slowly to the balcony. "Oh my God. Are those the police dogs?" Kai turned her head slowly to me. She walked back in the room and held her dog while she cried. The dog handlers and the crime scene unit began trying to piece the dogs back together before loading them each into body bags. I could feel their pain from inside my room. I had always been able to feel other people's emotions. I was about 10 years old when I realized not everyone could do that. My mother had come home drunk off her ass, and my grandma retreated to her room. I could feel my grandmother's pain and disappointment in her daughter as if it were her own. A deep, disgusted feeling wrapped in guilt. She couldn't figure out what had gone so horribly wrong with our mother. I felt bad for my grandma. I asked Travis if he could feel her, and he looked at me like I was crazy. I could hear the men downstairs cussing very loudly, crying out for revenge. They were now out for blood. I turned on the tiny TV in my room and watched the newscasters below reporting an officer-involved homicide and dead dogs. "Horror in Gatlinburg this morning," the newscaster lady began. "We want to warn you, the images you are about to see are disturbing. As you can see, police dogs were killed, along with one officer. The officer's name has not yet been released to the public until his family can be notified. We're being told that at least 10 police dogs were killed. We will update you viewers with fewer information as we receive it. It's an incredibly sad day here in Gatlinburg." There must have been a drone up because they were showing the images of the parking lot from above. Pictures and videos of crying policemen flashed on the screen. My phone rang and it was Benoit. Benoit told me the 2 detectives from LAPD, the FBI, the TVA, Gatlinburg PD, several of the police from the neighboring cities, and a group of men from the National Guard were planning a full-scale manhunt. Roadblocks were set up in all directions. I can't say for sure, but when the people of this area saw those dead dogs, that was it. They wanted to find this guy and turn off their body cams, if you know what I mean. Tourism was also being affected, and it was July. The 4th was right around the corner, and the city elders were furious this had gotten so much national news. First COVID, and now this. When the news announced the death of the chief of police of Gatlinburg, the mood really changed everywhere you went. Angry and scared families of the missing were all over the place, hanging missing persons posters. Gatlinburg had really gotten national headlines in November 2016 when the fire hit. The town had just finally recovered. This was not good for business. Benoit asked if she could pick me up and bring me back down to the station again. I showered and got ready. I tried to make Kai as comfortable as I could, gave her pain pills and something to drink before I left. Blue had laid herself across Kai. I patted Blue and told Kai I would bring back food. When I got to the station, the 2 detectives from LAPD and Benoit were waiting for me. The parking lot was filled to the brim with police cars from cities I had never even heard of before. There were cops everywhere, and they all had Starbucks coffee in their hands. It made me feel bad for the lady with the coffee shop downtown. That would have been a really nice sale for her. God knows Starbucks didn't need it.